Morning, everyone. I'm just going to wait for a few minutes for people to join us and for it to catch up, and then we'll get started. So hello and welcome to this week's Learn With Lorna. Bizarre that we're on the 21st of these, I think. Oh, nice to see people saying hello already. Hello, Diane. If you're able to text in and say hello, say where you're watching from, that's awesome. That's always one of the best parts of it for me, is seeing everybody's names and hellos and coming in and where they're watching from. So please do that. It's appreciated. We are, as I say, on the 21st of this series. Oh, happy Thursday to you, Carolyn, too. That's a nice thing to say. Hi, Jenny, back again in Australia. Yeah, so 21st of these. So we've looked at all sorts of different subjects, and this week we're going to look at a collection from Skye and Lochalsh. Before I start, I'll do, as I have done the last few weeks, just a reminder that this live cast is brought to you by Highland at no cost to the viewer. Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and the event requires no payment and no subscription. Oh, hi Kim, hi Nancy, lots of people saying hello, it's lovely. Oh, all over, lovely. Before I start, there's a couple of points that I wanted to touch on that are all positive and good. One, if you're on our newsletter, you'll have seen, or following our Facebook or Twitter pages, you'll have seen that we're starting the process of reopening our buildings again now. So really, really good news to be able to bring you. So the Highland Archive Centre in Inverness reopening on the 25th, Skye and Lochalsh reopening on the 1st, and then Lochaber on the 8th. Nucleus is not reopening just yet, but the staff are back in the building, so they will be able to carry out research and things like that. So there's more details on our website if you want to know more about that. But good news to be coming to that stage where we're able to gradually start to reopen. And things will be a bit different, but more information on our website if you want to know about that. The second thing I wanted to tell you before I get started is about our Doors Open Day plans. So many of you will be familiar with the fact that we run Doors Open Days. We take part in them, and usually that's one of our biggest events of the year. Certainly in Inverness, we have several hundred people who come in for Doors Open Day. This year, obviously, we're not going to be in a position to do that, but instead we're doing a virtual Doors Open Day event. And so I will introduce that on the weekend of the 5th and 6th of September. I'll introduce that with a live broadcast about the service, just quite brief. And then I'm going to follow that with some interviews I'm going to do with people in all our different offices. So some of the archivists, some of the conservators, Jamie, who runs Umbala, different people, and our family historian. So throughout that weekend, there'll be 8 or 9 interviews going out, just very brief, across that weekend for you to look at and see some faces other than mine in the service. So I hope you can join us for that. There's an event notification on our Facebook page if you want to follow that. Now, as I've said, we have the 4 offices. So for those of you who haven't watched before, we have the main archive centre in Inverness, which is the hub centre, the Highland Archive Centre. Then we have Skye and Lochalsh Archive Centre in Portree. Fort William has the Lochaber Archive Centre, and then Nucleus has the Caithness records. So what I'm trying to do going forward, and those of you who've been watching from the start will remember that these started aimed at school pupils, and now we're just carrying on all different subjects and different audiences. So what I'm trying to do going forward is take some examples of collections from each of the offices so that you get to know a little bit more about them. We did the Cameron of Lochiel collection a few weeks ago from Lochaber. This week we're looking at a collection from our Skye and Lochalsh Archive Centre. Hello, Hugh Dan. And this week we're looking at the Duncan Macpherson collection. So the Duncan Macpherson collection is an example of one of our privately deposited collections. So you'll maybe remember me talking about how we have records that are deposited by the Highland Council or the predecessors of the Highland Council. And also we have records that are deposited with us by institutions, businesses, families, all sorts of other groups that they've given to us to ensure that they're preserved. So again, if I've put this call out before, but if any of you have things like that that you think might be of interest and you want them to be preserved and looked after by us, then please do get in touch with the relevant archive centre. And so Duncan Macpherson collection is a good example of this. Duncan Macpherson was a pharmacist, a chemist, and a keen photographer and a photographic chemist. It's an extensive collection. There's all sorts of different things in it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Duncan Macpherson's life and then about what can be found in that collection and what it can be used for. Duncan Macpherson was born in Glenquithel in Aberdeenshire, and again, that's out with my area, so if that's pronounced incorrectly, I'm sure someone from Aberdeenshire will tell me. But he was born in 1882. His father, Neil, had been a native of Glenelg, but had gone across to Aberdeenshire to find farming work. And that was how he came to be born there. He was educated in Aberdeen, went to Gordon's College, Aberdeen, and then on to Edinburgh University. And it's a nice thing for me, if any of you have read my Meet the Team bit on our website, you can see that all the staff have done a little bit about their own background. And I went to Edinburgh University, and it's always nice for me when I come across people in the records who have, because there's just a little bit of a connection there. You know, me and Duncan Macpherson and however many million other people, but it is nice to see a little link and think that he might have known the buildings that I knew. He studied, as I say, as a chemist. He worked in England for a while. He worked in Strathpeffer for a while, but he established his pharmacist shop in Skye of Lochalsh in 1912, and this is the era that the collection dates from. It was at the junction of Main Street and Station Road, for anyone who's familiar with Kyle. And it was a chemist which obviously sold medicines and so on, but it also sold toiletries, photographic supplies, and also served as a tourist office. And that's particularly due to his own interests and his own skill set, and I'll come back to that in a second. Duncan Macpherson became very involved in the local community, so he, as the people are, we still have people like this who are involved in everything within a community, and he was one of those key pillars of his community, involved in the church, involved in the council. Oh, nice, Lily, you went to Edinburgh University too. So yeah, one of those key people in a community. In 1916, he married a lady called Margaret McKeever, and they went on to have two children, a boy called Neil and a girl called Mary. In addition to running his business, he published books. So he published 3 books. I'm just going to read the names to make sure I get them correct. Gateway to Skye, The Lure of the West, and Where I Belong were his 3 published books. He also published guidebooks. And from 1927 until 1960, he published a little book of tourist information called the Vest Pocket Guide to Skye and Lochalsh. He was so keen about people visiting the area and falling in love with the area that he researched all the information for this himself. So he collated train times, steamer times, accommodation information, sites of historic interest, and compiled them all into this little tourist guide. He also added in some of his own stories and anecdotes as well. When the final edition of this was published, it was announced in the Times, and then he got international fan mail about this set of tourist guides that he'd written. He was also a very keen photographer, and I'll come back to that in a second, but that's the bulk of the collection connects to that hobby. So I mentioned his children, Mary and Neil. If any of you, I know some people are watching from Skye, I'm seeing some names coming up. If any of you were in and around that area and happened to know the family, Mary went on, she married a gentleman, her name became Mary Hudson, and she was a teacher at Plockton High School. So if anyone has any memories of that, then please do let us know. I know that Catherine, who works in our Skye and Lochalsh Archive Centre, says that often people tell her lots of really happy memories of Mary Hudson as a teacher. That's a nice thing. Their son Neil passed away aged 24. He was killed during the Second World War on the 21st of May 1944 while serving in the Royal Army Service Corps. The collection includes lots of photos of both Mary and Neil. Our photos of Neil before he went to war, and correspondence from the family as well. And it's very clear from these letters and from the things dating from the time of Neil's death in 1944, the massive impact that his death had on the entire family. And that may sound like a silly thing to say, because of course it will have done, but it's just an insight into one family's grief and how that would have been reflected by in families all across the world. I'm going to go on now and tell you about what's in the collection. So you know a little bit now about Duncan Macpherson, his wife Margaret, and his children Neil and Mary. But I'm going to go on now and tell you about the collection itself, what's in it, and why it is of interest. Before I do so, I just want to put in another reminder that this livecast is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and this event requires no payment and no subscription. Good to get the message out there. Okay, so what is in the Duncan Macpherson collection? So there's some examples of things that I've talked about. There are examples of the little guidebook. There are examples of some of the tourist information he put together, some of the information he collated about travel and tourism in the area. There are business papers. If you were watching on AI Welders and Rose Street Foundry Week, you'll know what a huge source of information business collections can be. They give an insight into the running of the business and also into how that business it impacted the area that it existed in. So the business papers for the Duncan Macpherson chemist shop include pharmaceutical books and papers, order lists for stock. So when he's writing to people requesting stock for his shop, that's recorded in the collection. Adverts for different products that he held. And I want to read the exact words of this to you because it's so interesting to me to see how much the language has changed in an advert. So this is for Moorland lemonade crystals. So if anyone remembers Moorland lemonade crystals, please let me know. The advert says, they are prepared from tartaric acid, pure sugar, and terpeneless oil of lemon. They don't develop that nasty bitter taste so often associated with these preparations, and they don't go damp. Be careful that you get Moorland lemonade crystals obtainable from your chemist, and don't be put off with some other brand that's not as good. It's just such a wordy way to advertise, and I particularly like, be careful that you get this one and don't be put off. Don't be talked into anything else. So there's examples of things like that. And for people who are researching branding development or advertising, marketing, product design, things like that, there are examples of this in this collection. There's correspondence in the collection, so both personal and business. And both from his aspects of his business as a chemist and also from aspects of his business as a photographer. So for instance, there's a letter dated in 1912 by a gentleman called Archie McQueen, who says, please can you take my photograph? I'm applying for a job and I need to send in a picture alongside it. Which is interesting. I was sort of thinking, what job are you doing in 1912 that you need to send photographic ID in for? And I don't know the answer. In the same year, there's a letter that requests enough poison to kill a large collie dog instantaneously, which I find questionable. A, cruelty to the dog, but also, you know, imagine if these days you could just say, could I please send me enough poison to kill a large animal or person at speed? There are, again, insights into how the chemist's business has changed. So there's correspondence in the collection requesting treatment for cattle, red drench, lice, things like that. So please can you send me things so that I can treat lice in my livestock? So again, just an insight into the way that business has changed over the years. I'm going to apologise. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's someone now trimming grass outside my window, so I apologise if that's blocking my voice. Another letter, which is one of my favourites, is a request for straw hat polish and rat poison. Just interesting. Like something straight out of an Agatha Christie. There's also in the collection old remedies for salves, for lip balms, for herbal treatments things like that. And then, in these days where we're looking to try and have less those sort of damaging ingredients on our skin, then it's interesting to think that 100 years ago they were saying, how can we make these, sort of herbal remedies and so on. So those are in the collection. As I touched on, there are also some personal papers, things like correspondence between the brother and sister, Neil and Mary. We've had fairly recently, while the world was still normal at the end of last year, another accession of this collection of letters from Duncan and his wife Margaret while they were courting. So that's an interesting example of how things still come to light. We had accessioned this collection a long time ago, but subsequently more and more things have come to light in the house or in other people's collections that link into it. And so we now have that beautiful correspondence between Duncan and Margaret when they first met. So these collections are never necessarily static. We take them in and then more things come, more things are accumulated to add to the story of the family or the business or whatever it might be. But the majority of the collection and what the collection is famous for are the photographs. The photographic collection within the Duncan Macpherson collection is over 1,000 images. It's quite extraordinary. They date from the 1910s to the 1960s, and there are a huge, huge variation of subjects, of social history, of subject matter, of people, of social classes, all sorts of different things. It's quite a challenge for me to talk kind of passionately and enthusiastically about such an image-heavy collection. So what I'm going to do, if any of you have another device near you, then you can do it now. If not, then you can do it afterwards. If you visit Ambala, which is www.ambala.org.uk, a very large percentage of this collection has been digitised and uploaded onto our website, Ambala. So if you want to either have a look as I'm talking or go on afterwards and have a look, please do that. And you'll get an idea of some of the things that I'm enthusing about. I've roughly split it to talk about into 5 different categories of the images. The first one I want to touch on is family. So it's very clear throughout this collection how important the family is to Duncan Macpherson. As I say, we've got letters between the children, letters between him and his wife. So there's a lot of correspondence. And as I mentioned, the impact on the family when Neil died in the Second World War was substantial. And you can see through the photographs how much the family unit was important to Duncan Macpherson. So there are photographs of his family and family friends, everyday scenes of just their daily life, also events like family picnics, family trips out, things like that. There are portraits of the family, so there are both formal and informal portraits, and you can imagine after they lost Neil how very precious that series of photos would be to them. There's a fantastic picture of the children sitting on the sandbags outside their house, because obviously Kyle was an important military place during the war, and so there's pictures of the children sitting up on the sandbags piled up outside the building, and they're sitting on there. As I said, there's pictures of Mary and Neil growing up, going to events, doing things with their friends, and also photos of Neil just before he went off to war. There's also a great photo of Duncan Macpherson himself taking a photograph, and we're not sure who that was that took that, but it's nice to see him in action taking photographs. The second category I'd like to touch on, and as I say, it's me that's inventing these categories. They're not actually categorised like this, but it's just an easier way to talk about them, is scenery and tourism. Now, as I've said, from the fact that he created these tour guide books, these tourist guides, steamer information, trains information, and so on, he had a real interest in communicating his passion for Skye and Lochalsh to the rest of the world. And so he was involved in tourism and interested in early tourism. And so there are scenery and tourist photos in this collection. There are pictures of Skye and Lochalsh area. There are pictures of Plockton, obviously when his daughter went there to teach, pictures of the Five Sisters of Kintail, coastal scenes, thatched cottages, things like that that would be appealing both to locals and to tourists. And within the correspondence section of the collection, there are people writing saying, please can you send me some of the photos you've made into postcards? Please can you send me, do you have an image of this place? Can you send me some of it? Things like that. There are photographs of the opening of tourist sites and local important sites. So things like the Kyle golf course, the tennis courts, things like that. There's photos of those being developed and coming into being. One of the main things that I absolutely love, and I would really encourage you to go into Ambala and have a look at these, are the photos of Eileandonnan Castle. So many of you will know and many of you will not know, I'm guessing, that the castle had been destroyed, and then Eileandonnan Castle, as it appears now, was only built like that in the early 20th century. So it was the 1910s and 20s that it went from being a very small remains of a ruin into being the castle that we see today. And Duncan Macpherson documented that, and so there are pictures of the castle completely ruined and pictures of the castle being reconstructed and rebuilt and the bridge being built in. And those photos are in Ambala, and I would really encourage you to have a look at them because they're quite extraordinary for an image that we all know so well. On, you know, it's a chocolate box image, it's the image of Scotland, that castle out on the water with the bridge leading up to it. And to look and see a photograph of it very, very different not that long ago is quite extraordinary. So yeah, I would encourage you to have a look at that if you are able to do so. I mentioned Jamie, who runs the Ambala website, and I've mentioned Catherine, who is our trainee archivist in Skye and Lochalsh. And when I was prepping some thoughts about this collection, I said to both of them, what are your favourite images from this collection? And this is some of the ones that Jamie highlighted under my third category of travel and transport images. There are a lot of images in the collection to do with travel, transport and travellers. They are some great images of travellers with their caravans, with their families going across the Skye. And Jamie says that often when he puts the images from this collection up on Twitter or Facebook, the images that often go best are the ones of ferries, the ones of trains, train stations, and so on, because either people have a general nostalgic association with transport, or they will come back with memories of going on the ferries, being with their parents when they were little on the train, things like that. And so there are great images in this collection of the ferries, cars precariously balanced on bits of planks of wood and packed to the gunnels. Pictures of the railway station absolutely mobbed with people, pictures of the first Sunday sailings, things like that. And also other pictures of other boats, paddle steamers, all sorts of other transport links. The Outer Isles ferries, Loch Seaforth and Loch Moor, pictures of those as well. So that was some of the ones that Jamie thought were his favourites from this collection. There's also images in this collection of special occasions, so both special occasions in people's lives and also in the community's lives. So there are images of school groups, there are images of weddings, there's images of funerals. So he's documenting those key moments in the lives of individuals, in the lives of families, and also, as I say, in the lives of a community. So there are pictures of Harry Lauder's visit to Skye, pictures of Helen Keller's visit, pictures of royal visits. There's images of the layings of foundation stones, opening of significant buildings, and sporting events. So a lot of pictures of cricket matches. If anyone's watching in Skye and Lochalsh, are you still profuse cricket players? But there's certainly cricket images in that collection. And then the last section that I wanted to talk about a little bit was the one that Catherine highlighted as her favourite series of images within this collection, and that's just the images of daily life. He recorded Kyle street scenes, and he would go around and document the different streets within Kyle of Lochalsh and photograph them and how they were changing. Plockton again, and other areas. There are some of Strathpeffer in the collection. There are some that are entitled Characters of Kyle, so just well-known, well-kent faces in the town, pictures of these people and a little bit about them. He recorded local businesses, so there's pictures of the shop fronts of different businesses and his own business, some fantastic photos inside the pharmacist's shop and all the bottles lined up and so on in the chemist's shop. And he recorded the impact of the war on Skye and Lochalsh. So there are images of army parades, of Duncraig Castle with the nursing staff outside, of American sailors, of the Kyle ARP, and so on. So a really wide range of daily life, special occasions, significant events within the community, travel, transport, scenery, such a wide range of images within the collection. And if you'll forgive the pun, one thing you can really see is the development of photography within this collection. So you can see how the images go from maybe being a bit blurry or not set correctly, and you can start to see as he experiments with new techniques, new methods of doing things, they become clearer and clearer, and you start to see the progression of photography skills, playing with exposures, things like that. So anyone interested in photography and the development of photography, and I know there are a lot of people out there who have that as an interest, this is a really key collection to look at, to come to terms with all of those changes and see them developing. So Duncan Macpherson died in 1966, September 66. I wonder if any of you remember him or have, as I say, maybe memories of his daughter or the family, but he left a huge legacy to Skye and Lochalsh. Aside from the collection of documents and this substantial collection of images, a lot of people seem to have very fond memories of him and the family. Duncan Macpherson Court now is in Kyle of Lochalsh, just where the photographic shop used to be and the chemist shop used to be. So that's quite a legacy to leave. One thing we're looking to do going forwards is make a calendar of these from this collection. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, if you've got an opinion on a particular image you think must be in it, if you'd be interested in purchasing a copy of the calendar or finding out more, then please contact our Skye and Lochalsh Archive Centre, and you can do that by email or by using the Skye and Lochalsh Facebook page to find out a bit more of that. But that's something we're hoping to do in the next few months, because the collection is so beautiful. It's a shame not to have it out there for people to see. As I mentioned, please do have a look on Umballa. The images are there, a large percentage of them, so you can spend some time flicking through them and familiarising yourselves with the collection. It really is a beautiful set of images. I'm going to round off talking about this collection by saying again, as you'll be expecting, that this livecast is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and there's no charge to watch this event, and no payment required, and no subscription required either. I mentioned that High Life Highland is a charity. Obviously, Highland Archive Service sits within High Life Highland. As a charity, we do rely on donations, so if you are in a position to be able to donate towards the work of the service, we would really appreciate that. There is a link within the text that I've put up on this post to enable you to do that. You can also mark on there which centre you want it to go to. So it's not going into a general pot, it's being allocated to one of the 4 archive centres, and it's really appreciated. It enables us to carry on doing our work, to carry on protecting the collections and the heritage that we're so lucky to look after. So if you're able to do that, that would be appreciated. I hope you've enjoyed us. You can join us next week. Next Thursday is my birthday, so I'm expecting all of you to be there and take part with me. We're talking about some tales from the court records next week, and again, that is a series of records that's just full of stories and all sorts of information. So I hope you can join us next Thursday for that. But thank you for saying it's interesting, Fiona. That's appreciated. It really is a lovely collection, so I hope you're able to have a look at it. And I'll speak to you next week. Take care.